Hi everyone, I hope this video finds you well. This lesson is going to be on conditional statements, so please make sure that you have your chart out that was given to you in class, and perhaps a note sheet so that you can take some notes as we move through. So our goal with this lesson is to complete guided notes and examples on conditional statements and write conditional statements for your definition, so that you can identify, write, and analyze conditional statements to find their truth value. You'll know you've got it when you can complete your conditional definitions task with at least 80% accuracy. So let's just complete this sentence. If I download a song to my computer, then I could potentially get a virus. That's one outcome. If I download a song to my computer, then I can listen to it. There's another potential outcome. I'm sure there's plenty more. So let's complete this. Have you ever promised to do something on one condition? Such as, I will give you a ride to school on one condition. You have to give me $5 for gas. Let's take this and rewrite it as an if-then statement. If I give you a ride to school, then you have to give me $5 for gas. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to do something for you, but you're going to have to do something for me as well. Conditional statements are statements that can be written in the form if P, then Q. And so that's what this symbolic notation is right here. A conditional statement consists of two parts: the hypothesis and the conclusion. The hypothesis is the part P of a conditional statement. It's the part that follows the word if. The conclusion is the part Q of a conditional statement, and it's following the word then. So if P, then Q. P is your hypothesis, Q is your conclusion. You can phrase any conjecture as an if-then statement so that you can quickly identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So let's look at some parts. Let's identify the hypothesis and the conclusion of each conditional statement. Again, we remember it's conditional because it is an if-then statement. So if today is Thanksgiving Day, then today is Thursday. The hypothesis, today is Thanksgiving Day. It's everything that follows the word if, but does not go past the word then. The conclusion is everything that comes after the second part, the then. So the conclusion is today is Thursday. Note we are not including the words if and then as part of the hypothesis or the conclusion. That's very important. Let's look at this. A number is a rational number if it is an integer. So hypothesis, a number is an integer. The conclusion is the number is a rational number. Parts of a conditional statement continued. So let's look and see if we can identify the hypothesis and the conclusion of the statement. A number is divisible by 3 if it is divisible by 6. So just like the last one, the if is not at the beginning of the sentence like we saw at the first few examples, and it doesn't have to be. The hypothesis comes after the word if, so that must make the hypothesis if it is divisible by 6. So a number is divisible by 6. The conclusion is then a number is divisible by 3. So just remember, if does not have to be at the beginning of the sentence. The hypothesis can occur anywhere in the sentence. And in this example, like the last one, it's at the end of the sentence. So when writing math, if P then Q can also be written as if P, Q. Q if P, or P implies Q, and P only if Q. Lots of ways you can write a conditional statement, the if and then. Do not worry about memorizing all of these. It's just a note that you can always refer back to, and we'll talk about it more as we move through the unit. So let's practice writing a conditional statement from the following. An obtuse triangle has exactly one obtuse angle. There are no ifs in this statement at all, but we can insert them. You just have to decide what is the hypothesis and then what is the conclusion based on that hypothesis. So I can add my word if. If a triangle is obtuse, then it has exactly one obtuse angle. So let's see if we can write a conditional statement from this example. Two angles that are complementary are acute. There's no if again. Where should it go? If two angles are complementary, then they are acute. The hypothesis would be two angles are complementary. The conclusion is they are acute. A conditional statement is going to have a truth value. That statement is going to be either true or false. It is false only when the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. I'm going to say that again because that's super important. It is false only when the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. We are going to look at every conditional statement and we are going to analyze the truth value. Every time you see a conditional statement, you're going to ask yourself, is that statement true or false? And it really, really depends on what your hypothesis is. Is it true or false? If you find a conditional statement to be false, then you need to find a counterexample, like we talked about in the other lesson. So let's practice analyzing truth values of conditional statements. Let's determine if this conditional is true. If it's false, we're just going to give a counterexample. If this month is August, then next month is September. So the hypothesis comes after the word if. So the hypothesis, this month is August. The conclusion is next month is September. So that's true. When the hypothesis is true, the conclusion is also true. In this case, September follows August, so this is true. So let's look at this one. If two angles are acute, then they are congruent. So you have to know what acute means, angles that measure less than 90 degrees. Congruent means they have the same value. Well, that one's going to be false. Two angles are acute, okay, less than 90 degrees. 80 degrees and 30 degrees are acute angles. So in this case, I found a counterexample. 80 degrees and 30 degrees are not congruent, and they don't have to be. So that makes the conclusion false, and I've found a counterexample to prove it false. So you were given this note sheet in class. And so we are going to work on filling that in together. This is called your conditional, negation, converse, and inverse chart. So definitely more vocab for our word wall. So we have talked about already that a conditional statement is a statement that can be written in the form if P, then Q. And so this is what it looks like with symbolic notation. If P, the arrow, and then Q. So if P, then Q. And an example is an if-then statement. If it is Saturday, then it is the weekend. And we always ask ourselves the truth value. That would be true. If it's Saturday, then it is the weekend. All right, let's look at converse next. A converse statement is formed by switching the hypothesis and the conclusion. And the way that we would write that with symbolic notation is by flipping the P and the Q. If Q, then P. If it is the weekend, then it is Saturday. And so you want to ask yourself, is that statement true or is that false? If it is the weekend, then it is Saturday. Well, I think that's false. And if I say it's false, I need to be able to come up with a counterexample to prove that it's false. If it is the weekend, then it could be Saturday or Sunday, or even Friday night if you want to be technical. So we can prove that false. Let's look at the next one. The negation of a statement is when you determine the opposite, okay? The opposite value. And that looks like a tiny little sideways S, sort of. And so when you're given a statement, such as today is Saturday, and you are asked to negate that, you are going to say, today is not Saturday. If today is Saturday, the opposite is going to say, today is not Saturday. And so when we negate it, we determine the opposite value. Today is not Saturday. All right. So today is not Saturday is true. We negated it and made it true. Today is Saturday is false. So when we talk about the inverse is formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. And so what that looks like with symbolic notation is taking that little symbol that means negate. So if not P, then not Q. And so for example, we are going to say, if it is not Saturday, then it is not the weekend. And just like all of the other examples, we want to ask ourselves, is that true or is that false? And in this example, we can say, it's false. If it is not Saturday, then it is not the weekend. All right, for this example, if an animal is a cat, then it has 4 paws. Let's take the converse of that. All right, and so if an animal has 4 paws, then it is a cat. Remember, the converse is when you switch the hypothesis and the conclusion from your original. There are other animals that have 4 paws that are not cats, so the converse is a false statement. If we take the inverse, that means I'm taking the original hypothesis, an animal is a cat, the conclusion, it has 4 paws, and we are negating them both. So if an animal is not a cat, so the opposite of being a cat is not being a cat, and negating the conclusion. It has 4 paws, then it does not have 4 paws. So if an animal is not a cat, then it does not have 4 paws. And there are animals that are not cats that have 4 paws. So this inverse statement is false, and you have found your counterexample. Here is your truth table chart that is just there for reference. You certainly do not need to worry about memorizing this, and we'll refer to it throughout the unit. Now, you've learned a lot of vocab and you've seen a lot of examples. And now your goal is to practice writing these types of conditional statements. And so the paper that looks like this that you were given in class can be used as your rough draft. You will have an assigned word from Unit 1 written at the top of your paper. This is the word that you need to use for this assignment, and all of your statements are going to be about that word. So go ahead and make sure that you know the definition for your term, and you're going to write it in number 1. Then on number 2, go ahead and take that definition and write it as a conditional statement for your word. I want you to also practice writing the converse of the conditional statement and keep going, analyze the truth value of that, and then find some examples and some non-examples, okay? Examples of your word and some non-examples of your word. And what you want to do after you've worked through your examples in your rough draft is to create a formal copy, or like a final copy, in either a Google Doc if you'd prefer, or a Google slide. If you have any questions at all, please message me through Google Classroom or Remind, or send me an email. I'm here for you, and I wish you good luck.